Hello, I'm Samantha and this is Read That. Welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros today. Very excited. This is probably one of the most viral books from Book Talk. It's an enemies to lovers fantasy book. And today's episode is basically just going to be a deep dive / summary of the book and my own personal review / rating of it. So just be warned, there will be a lot of spoilers in this episode. So if you don't like spoilers and you haven't read the book yet, just give this one a miss. But if you want to learn about Fourth Wing, keep listening. Now, as promised at the start of every episode, we will be saying what we are currently reading. Right now, I'm still reading Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros on Audible and still reading The Goal by Ali Kennedy. So I have been a bit slow lately with my reading, but that's fine. Let's jump right into this. So I'm basically just going to give like a really in-depth summary of the book. Let's get into the book. So we have a place called Navarre and Baskai War College. Now this is where people train to become dragon riders. So we have a girl called Violet Sorengale who is 20 years old and she's been training her whole life to be a scribe, which is somebody who studies history. However, her mother, who is the general, forces her into the riders' quadrant. Now, riders are those who bond with their dragons and then will defend Navarre. Violet also has a sister called Mira, who is a rider as well, a brother, Brennan, who was a rider as well, but is passed away, and her father, who is also passed away, but was a scribe. Now, we are told that Violet is physically not built to be a rider. She's very weak, she's very small and fragile, she breaks her bones really easily, and her joints dislocate as well very easily. So Mira tries to convince their mother to not let her go into being a rider because she knows this is very dangerous and she probably won't make it out alive. However, her mom does not give in, and then Violet just is like, it's okay, I will go and be a rider. However, Mira does give her advice on how to survive and provides her with special boots so that she's able to cross the parapet, which she does. She does survive. However, before she crosses as well, Mira warns her to avoid a person called Xander Ryerson. Now, he is very important for the book, so you will hear a lot about him. Xander is the son of Fen Ryerson, who led the rebellion, and Violet's mother executed Xander's father, so they're enemies. Keep that in mind. So the book starts on conscription day, and Violet packs her things, including the book of fables from her father. She also meets her best friend Rhiannon right before she's about to cross the parapet, and just before they're about to cross, Violet gives one of her boots to Rhiannon, so they have one boot each on. Now these are the boots Mira gave her to help her cross the parapet without falling. This is also the first time she sees the guy Xander that her sister warned her not to talk to or engage with. They have to cross the parapet. Now the parapet is basically this narrow bridge that is like hundreds of meters high into the air, and they have to cross it themselves without falling off. If they fall off, they will die. If they make it across, they've survived the first task. Now Violet does end up crossing the parapet. However, while she is crossing, another person as well was crossing as well, called Jack Barlow, who tries to actually kill her while she's crossing. She ends up still surviving, and she does pull a dagger to him, and that's how she gets across. This is when she creates her first enemy as well, because he vows to kill her. So now she's got to watch her back out for this guy that's trying to kill her for no reason. So once she crosses the parapet, she's now entering Basgai War College. Now, once she first gets there, she looks for a guy called Dean Atos. Now, this is her childhood best friend. He is a second-year rider. Now, he sees her as well and is very concerned for her safety and does not want her to be a rider either, and tries to switch her back to the scribes because he knows how physically unable she is to be a rider. Now, Violet is like, it's too late, I'm a rider now, stop being concerned for me, I can do this. She also was very excited to see Dane because she had a little crush on him as they were growing up, and she hopes that it could be something more. And also, he's the only person that reminds her of home in this college. She doesn't know anyone. So she joins his squad. He wants her to join his squad so he can keep an eye on her, and so she does. However, the guy called Zayden swaps their squads, and she ends up in Fourth Wing, which is Zayden's wing. Now, the next day, their training and classes start. Violet has not been prepared for any of this, so she has no idea what she is doing because she, like I said, she's been training to be a scribe her whole life. So Rhiannon, the girl that she met right before she crossed the parapet, teaches her some skills, and tries to help her out. She also reads Brennan's journal that he had written that helped Mira, and that Mira had given to her to help her survive. Now, one of the classes they have is called sparring matches. So from the book that Brennan wrote, she realizes she can poison her opponents before she has to verse them. So that's basically how she wins these sparring matches. Because she hasn't trained to be an actual fighter, she poisons her matches before. So this works until one time it doesn't, and the person is swapped out and she has to spar with Xaden. Now, one night that she is getting the poison for her match, she spots Xaden and other marked ones having a secret meeting. Now, marked ones are the children of those who were part of the rebellion. Now, they have like a relic-like mark, so it's like a tattoo on them that basically signifies their betrayal of Navarre. Now, Violet sees a group of them gathering and knows that they're not allowed to meet. One, because they are marked ones, they can't meet in bigger groups of 3, and she thinks she gets away with it because once they all leave. However, Xaden catches her out because he has a power that he's a shadow wielder, so he can see her. Xaden knows she's there and asks Violet, please don't tell anyone, and if you don't, I will owe you a favor. So now he owes her a favor, because if she dobbed on them, they would be in really big trouble. Keep in mind, whenever Violet sees Xaden, she realizes, oh my god, this guy is so good looking. But she knows she shouldn't like him because they're supposed to be enemies. The book keeps going on, and Violet and their squad start training for the gauntlet. Now that's done before thrashing. The day of thrashing is when riders bond with their dragons. Now we have 3 characters called Jack, Tyron, and Orion, which are plotting to kill this small dragon they've spotted, this small golden dragon. And Violet overhears them and thinks it's wrong and is like, oh my god, why would you kill an innocent dragon? She's so beautiful, because she's this tiny little feather tail that's like this gold thing. So Violet basically tries to stop them, and she battles with them, even though, again, she has a disadvantage because, one, she's physically fragile and she hasn't been training to fight. Then, while they're fighting over this, all of a sudden this big black dragon lands behind her and starts communicating with her through her head. Now, this means that this black dragon has bonded with her, because once a dragon and a rider bond, they can communicate through their head. Now, this dragon is called Taryn, and in that moment she realizes that she has bonded with this dragon. So once they've bonded, they have to go keep their record, and she goes to tell the record keeper what her name is and what her dragon is. But just as she's about to mention it, another dragon starts speaking to her, which is the small golden dragon as well that she was trying to save, called Indana. So basically, Violet has bonded true dragons, which is unheard of. It's never happened. It's a really big deal. She also then finds out that she's now connected to Xaden even more, because their dragons are actually a mated pair. So Taryn is her dragon and Segale is Xaden's dragon, and they're a mated pair. So now Xaden and Violet are basically bonded together as well, technically. So if Xaden dies, Violet will die, and if Violet dies, Xaden dies. So even though they're enemies, they are forced now to be together. Can you see where this is headed? So she's not too happy about it. After she bonds her dragons, Dean, her best friend, comes and congratulates her and kisses her. Now, in the moment, she thought, oh my god, this is great. But when they do kiss, she realizes, wait a minute, I don't think I like Dean how I thought I liked Dean. So that ends that little thing that she thought she had for Dean. Dean also basically is telling her to unbond with one of the dragons and to pick one, and to pick the small one, because you will not be able to survive with the big dragon. You'll fall off and all that. So she doesn't really like that either. He's a bit of an annoying character. He tries to tell her what she can and can't do. He does say it's to keep her safe, but also humans can't really have a say on what dragons do. So they just have to, Dean has to get over it, really. Some time passes, and then one night, Violet is sleeping in her room and is woken by a group of people trying to kill her again. They're trying to kill her, one, because she is the daughter of the general, but also because they want to bond with her dragon. It's also against the rider's codex to kill a rider in their sleep. So she tries to fight them off, and Indana, her little small feather-tailed dragon that she's bonded with, is able to stop time, and that's exactly what she does. and this gives time for Violet to quickly get away before she's killed. It also gives time for Xaden to come and rescue her, basically, and kill the rest of the group, except one person that is able to escape before he gets there. So they later find out that Andana is a feathertail, which means she's a young dragon. So she's not actually fully developed, which means she wasn't actually allowed to bond in the first place. So she wasn't actually allowed to bond in the first place because they can pass their powers on to the human, which is exactly what happened. And that's, again, not really allowed. But it did result in Violet's life being saved, so that's kind of a blessing. Now, Violet does reveal that the other person who got away in the attack of trying to kill her was a girl called Amber, who is a squad leader. Again, because this is against the rules of killing people in their sleep, she is then executed because she has broken those rules. And this causes Dean and Violet to have another fight because Dean thinks that she's lying and doesn't believe her, and asked to actually see her memories because Dean has a power where he can touch your head or face and he can see your memory. And Violet refuses that because she's like, you've known me my whole life, why would I be lying? Like, why don't you just believe me? So that causes another rift between their friendship. Now, Xaden provides even more protection to Violet now because not only are they bonded together, it's clear that Violet's under attack, and Xaden realizes this. Without Violet alive, he's not alive either, so he provides more protection to her because of their bond together. So he gets his friend Liam to basically escort her around everywhere and to protect her. Liam and her then eventually become friends because they're spending so much time together. Now, riders, once they bonded to a dragon, they would eventually get given like a signet power. Now, Violet is waiting for hers to come through, and hers is taking forever to come through, and she's getting really frustrated. So one night, she does start to feel some sort of power coming to her through her dragon, Taryn. And she can start to feel his emotions really strongly, and she's getting excited because she thinks her power's coming. However, she is hit with like a feeling of strong lust because she's feeling her dragon's feelings, and she realizes it's because Taryn and Sigale, Xaden's dragon, are basically having a bit of fun, sexy time. And she can feel these emotions really strong. So she goes outside because she's like, I need to cool down. This is crazy. Like, what is going on? And she sees Xaden is outside as well doing the same thing because he obviously can feel Sigale's emotions as well because that's his dragon. And so they're basically discussing it, and he's like, oh, you're just going to have to learn to block it out, and I've just had to get used to it too. But because they're feeling these emotions so strongly, and they low-key are finding each other attractive, but neither one has admitted it yet, they give in and they actually end up kissing. So this is the first kiss that they share. It is so cute. But then they stop, and Xaden says, it's just because we're feeling the dragon emotions, like it doesn't mean anything. Then she goes to bed, and she is falling even more in love with this man, and she knows that she shouldn't. Then the next day in a class, Jack Barlow comes back and challenges Violet to a like sparring match kind of thing, and she knows that she physically won't be able to fight him. He's allergic to oranges, so she uses this allergy against him, and that's how she ends up winning that. But this is the moment Xaden again realizes she can't protect herself and she's not going to be able to survive. So he decides to train her, and therefore they start spending a lot more time together, and obviously this causes their attraction to keep growing, and they start obviously learning more about each other because now they have to spend more time together than they thought. Now, as a couple months go by, and she's finally able to see Mira again because her squad is sent to Mazarat, which is where Mira is stationed, and she sees Mira again, and she's really happy because they're not allowed to actually have contact with their family when they're first year. So she didn't know if Mira was still alive, and Mira didn't know if Violet was alive. So it was a very wholesome moment when they realized that they both still are alive. And obviously Xaden has to come because their dragons are bonded together, and so they're not actually allowed to spend too many days apart. I think they worked out that 3 days is the max because their dragons can't be apart from each other, so therefore they can't be apart. This is when Xaden and Violet realize that they can actually communicate with each other through their minds, so they can actually just mind speak to each other. They don't even have to say words, which I think is so cool. So you can just be standing there having a full conversation with this man and no one will know anything. This is also when Xaden makes Violet a saddle for her dragon Taryn so she won't fall off, and so that she can sit on the dragon without falling, which again shows that he really does care and he's putting in all this effort, but he is claiming it's just because if Violet dies, he dies. So it's in his best interest. But we all know that he is just being a gentleman. Eventually, they go back to Vescaev and they just fall into routine of school. And then towards the end of the year, they have war games. So war games starts, and Jack Barlow is always targeting Violet and her squad. And this is when her signet, her power finally comes into fruition, and she realizes her signet is lightning. So she can just make like lightning strikes all the time. So during this fight, she ends up striking a lightning and it hits a tower that Jack Barlow was on, and he falls to his death basically. So she ends up killing him. Now she's very upset about this, and because she didn't mean to kill him, she didn't even know she had this power. It just came in the moment. Finally, her signet power came. Later that night, she's very upset and she's talking to Xaden about it in his room. And she's like, I'm not a killer. That's not what I intend to be, etc., etc. Now, she's in Xaden's room when all this conversation goes on later that night. They finally give in their attraction and they end up sleeping together for the first time. So exciting, so excited. But they're still not actually officially together. And Xaden still won't admit that he likes her. He's just saying it's just a physical thing. Don't read into it. Then Celebration Day comes. This is when Basgiath hosts a day to celebrate the end of the rebellion. So this is not a very good day for marked ones. And Xaden obviously is not celebrating, as he is a marked one. And she finds him out on the parapet, really upset. And so she goes to comfort him again. And from there, they end up talking a bit more about their history of their family. And then they end up, again, sleeping together. And this night, she tells him that she loves him. And she's going to spend the night with him. However, during the night, a guy called Garrick, another marked one, interrupts them because Basgiath is under attack and they have to quickly get out. However, this just ended up being the final war game for them. And Violet ends up going with Xaden to Athbeen because, again, they can't be separated. So Violet goes with Xaden to Athbeen for the war games. Now, these things called Griffin Riders come to them, and they've always been known, Violet's always known that Griffin Riders are like the enemy. But it's apparent that Xaden actually knows these Griffin Riders and has been working with them the whole time, as well as Liam and a girl called Imogen, also marked ones. Now, Xaden explains to her that these aren't actually the enemy of Navarre that everyone keeps telling her that they are. He tells her that he's been working with them this whole time because of a thing called venin. Now, venin is like an evil species that has been written in the books that she's read, but has been taught that never existed, but it turns out they actually do exist, and they're actually the biggest threat to everyone. So while the group of them, Xaden, Imogen, Liam, Violet, and Garrick, are in Athbeen, they get a message from Coronel Atos, which is Dean's father, saying, survive if you can. So they basically have to stay there and fight. So they realize they've actually kind of been put here on purpose. Yes, war games are going on, but they've actually been put in a dangerous situation. This is more than just the typical war games that every other squad is probably facing. They realize they have to stay there and fight for the town they're in, Ressen, or if they leave, that whole town will get killed. So they decide, obviously, to stay. Now, as they're battling out with the venin, one of the dragons does end up dying. Now, Liam's dragon ends up getting injured and dies. And this means that Liam now is dying and then does die as well. Because a dragon can live without a rider, but a rider can't live without their dragon. So this hits Violet very hard and the group very hard as well, but especially Violet, because not only was Liam protecting her, she feels that it's his fault that he is dying now. However, once he dies, they have to still keep fighting to keep getting the venom off them. They do eventually defeat the venin, but in the process, Violet is stabbed with a poisoned dagger and she passes out. Now, in this moment, she passes out, and then we switch to Xaden's point of view. We find out Xaden and the rest of the group have now moved to a different place and take Violet to be healed. Now, a few days pass and she eventually wakes up and she is healed, and we find out that the person who healed her was Brennan, her brother, who apparently was dead all along, and comes in and welcomes Violet to the revolution And then the book ends. Can you imagine? And then the book just ends. And that is the whole story of Fourth Wing. Now, I know that was a lot, and I hope it made sense to everyone, my in-depth summary, but I tried to make it as quick as possible while also giving you the quick details. Now, my rating and thoughts on Fourth Wing. I ended up giving it a 4 stars. I ended up giving the book 4 stars. I say this is probably one of the best fantasy books I've read, but I've read 2 fantasy books, so that's not a lot to say. But I think it is worth the hype that it has around it. I think Rebecca Yarros did a really good job in writing it. I think the ending was phenomenal. It literally was crazy. I think the ending was really, really, really good. I think the way she could world build and also keep the story moving at the same time was really, really good. It keeps you engaged the whole time. I feel like fantasy is usually slow at the start, especially for like a first book in a series, because there's a lot of world building to have, there's a lot of lore to learn, a lot of context to comprehend. But I feel like she did a really good job at providing this information to us, but also showing us what was happening in the story and keeping the story moving along while also learning about the dragons and the history and the politics of the whole book. So I think that was really good. It always keeps you engaged, yet you're still learning about the world throughout. I think Violet and Xaden's story was amazing. The enemies to lovers was really good. It is like a slow burn. It was a bit of a slow burn, but I feel like it went at a good pace. The whole book does take over the whole first year, so it is slow in their like love story. I feel like that's good because you really get that building of the fact that they are enemies, because I feel like some books will say they're enemies and they hate each other for like a few chapters and then they're already loving each other, whereas this was, we're introduced to Xaden at the start as stay away, don't talk to him because he's a marked one. First of all, his father led the rebellion, his father was killed by your mother, like there's a lot of bad blood there. She knows she shouldn't like him and she starts to find him attractive, and it just builds from there. And then they give in to the physical side of it. Like probably I think by the time they kissed, it was literally like chapter 20 something, and then they slept together in like chapter 30, 32, and there's only like just under 40 chapters, I think. So it is a really slow burn. It happens right at the end of the book, but I feel like I enjoy when books are like that, when they're enemies to lovers, because again, you need that context, you need that building. Things don't just happen. So I enjoyed that, and it also builds the tension even more, so then when it finally does happen, you're like giddy about it. So I appreciate that. Now there is spicy scenes in this book. I think they were well written. They gave what they needed to give. It didn't keep going on for books on end, and I think there's only 2 really, really explicit ones, and that's it. Besides the kisses, there's only 2 like explicit ones, and I think that's a good amount, because you don't want to be, the whole book wasn't just that, which is good. I appreciate that one too. So if you don't like that sort of stuff, you can probably just get past it for the book, because like I said, it's only a few chapters. A character I really liked was Liam. I was actually really surprised when he died, and I was hoping that it wasn't actually going to happen, because obviously you're reading the book and it's like, oh, is the dragon going to die? Is it not? Because they're obviously battling it out, and then eventually he does get injured and starts dying, and then I thought something would happen that would save Liam, but it didn't, and I was actually so devastated. I was like, no, Liam, and then I couldn't read the book for like, I don't know, like sounds so dramatic. I couldn't read it for like a day because I was so upset that Liam died, and I was like, no, one of my favorites. I loved him. Even the way it happened, it was just so sad. A character that I could not stand, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people couldn't either, was Jack Barlow. Oh my god, he was so annoying. I hated him. I know he's supposed to be like the annoying one and it's like her actual enemy, but I just couldn't stand him. So when he died, I was like, yeah, good. But I have heard a little things from TikTok that I think he's going to come back. And I'm like, no, why couldn't the one that died come back be Liam? not him. But I don't know if that's true. Like I said, I'm only still reading Iron Flame, so I can't confirm that one yet. But if that's the case, Rebecca, what are you doing? Get rid of Jack. Even Dean was a bit annoying. I know I don't hate him, but I don't love him. He was annoying. He keeps trying to control Violet. He thinks he likes her, but he doesn't really. He's too much of like a rule follower. He's basically the type of person that puts rules and like regulations and those kind of things above like actual personal relationships. Like with the early in the book with when Amber tried to kill Violet, he didn't believe her because how could she do it when she was like a squad leader herself, and that goes against the codex. And he didn't believe Violet either, and he's like, let me see to prove it to me. Like, you should just know her word because you guys have grown up together. Why would she lie to you anyways? So I don't like Dean. He can leave. He can leave. Now I think my last thoughts on the book was the ending was really good. The ending, I think the ending is what made it go from, I was going to give it a 3.5 stars as I was reading it, but then the ending happened and I was like, yeah, no, this is 4. Because what do you mean a person who is supposed to have been dead the whole book is all of a sudden alive? I was listening to it on Audible, and my jaw literally went, my jaw was on the floor. I was not expecting that. When he walked in and it said like, Brennan, welcome to the revolution, all that sort of stuff, I was like, Brennan, the brother Brennan? What? I was like, oh my God, this guy is supposed to be dead. How is he alive? And then the book just ended and I was like, what? It was crazy. She knew what she was doing with that ending and she slayed. She got herself an extra half star. I think it was an amazing way to end the book. It left the book really on a cliffhanger, and it was like, okay, I really need to start the next book now because I need to find out what is going on. I definitely would recommend this book. It's well written, it's easy to understand, especially for a fantasy. I could understand it, and like I said, I'm new to fantasy, so it was very easy to understand, very easy to follow, very easy to learn the new world. I actually didn't have high expectations for it because I know everyone was hyping it up, but because I don't like fantasy, I was like, this is going to be boring. So I wasn't really expecting much, but I was actually blown away. So if you're thinking about reading it as well, even if you don't like fantasy like me, I think this is a really easy way to get started and a really good book to begin that fantasy journey. Even if you don't like fantasy, I think it's still a good read to go ahead, and it definitely deserves the hype that it gets. So that wraps up today's episode on Fourth Wing. I hope you enjoyed my little in-depth summary. I hope you understood it. For those that don't want to read the book, I hope it gave you all the context and told the story good. And for those that have read it, I hope it was a good, quick little recap summary for you. And also for those that want to read it and haven't read it and you like spoilers, I hope it intrigued you and makes you want to read it now even more. I'd love to know what you thought of the book if you've read it, and if you agree with my opinions as well. And do you agree with the hype of the book too? If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure to follow so you don't miss the next one. And thank you so much for listening, and I appreciate you being here. And don't forget to follow Read That with Samantha on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.